For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guide for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shade.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about current event headlines. Also, what you may be missing from your portfolio. We'll discuss the first year of retirement rule and then finally retirement moves to make before year end. My name's Jeff Shade, and as always, I'm just here to ask the questions, but the words of wisdom and solid advice, they come from Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. Good morning, Jake. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Thanks for asking.
Certainly welcome, my friend. I hope everybody else is having a great November. We appreciate you joining us here each and every week for Show Me the Money. Jake, November here is upon us already. December is around the corner. Hard to believe that the holiday season is around the corner, and that pretty soon we're going to be dining on turkey. Does it really feel like the holiday season to you yet?
Seems a little early yet still.
It does to me, too.
I think some of it is the weather. You know, we had a few cold days last week, but overall it's been very nice still. I think when the weather starts to really change, I think it'll start to feel more like holidays.
Yeah, and you know, it's been Christmas in some of the stores here for probably about a month or so with all the decorations. That's how I tell what season is. It's just whatever they're selling in the drugstore or in the supermarket. I know that that's probably coming up in a month or two.
It does seem that the Christmas stuff always gets earlier and earlier.
I know.
So my birthday's at the end of September, and a few weeks after that, they start putting Christmas stuff out before Halloween's even over. I guess whatever sells.
Whatever sells, money drives it here. But we've already wrapped up our Halloween candy buying spree here with all of it most 50 and 75% off. So I think we're pretty much set. Anyway, not here to talk about the holidays, not necessarily here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about finances. So let's talk about what's going on in the headlines these days. Is this going to be a November to remember and a December to forget? Or what should we expect economically and for the markets here in the 11th month of the year, Jake?
Unfortunately, I don't make the market do what it does. If I were going to guess, though, I still think there's a lot of people way off sides and underinvested. So I would say that for the end of November and December even too, I think we're going to see the market rally maybe fairly significantly. Some of the guys that call for these things are calling for 7,000, 7,100 on the S&P. There's a few calling for like 7,500 on the S&P, which is like a 12% rally or something. That's a really big number. That is possible. That does happen, especially at the end of the year. We get our Santa Claus rally, which is technically from between Christmas and New Year, but a lot of people kind of stretch that out for the whole holiday season. But I really think that positioning for institutional investors as well as family offices, billionaires, and even mom and pops are kind of underinvested here. And as the market starts to go into new highs, people are going to be rushing to catch up, and they're going to be chasing it every step of the way. And as they chase it up, that's going to push prices higher. And so I think 71, 72, 7,300 is very possible, which would be 5 or 6% from here, which is certainly worth staying invested for.
So, Jake, you say that most people are underinvested. Now, certainly when the market's high, I would think that this is not the time to dive into it. You want to, of course, always buy low, sell high. So when would we be looking to get invested if we're not invested enough?
Well, that's the problem, Jeff, is because all these hedge funds and things are underinvested, every time the market dips a little bit, they start buying like crazy, trying to get reinvested. And so instead of buying low and selling high, we may have to buy high and sell higher if we're not in already. That's kind of been the theme of the last 3 years or so, because a lot of people missed the low points in 2022. And by the time we got to the end of 2023, things were way back up, and I think people missed it there. There's some people that have been missing this entire 3 years of rally, and so there's a lot of people that are bitter about it, but eventually their greed will take over and they will start to invest. I mean, that's not to say we can't have a correction. We absolutely can. I'm not in any way saying that the market can't go down. It definitely can, but I would say that asking me for my opinion, I think we're going to churn higher, much to the chagrin of a lot of people on Wall Street.
So, Jake, for those people who come to you and say, Jake, I know that the market is really high right now. It's been going great guns now for the most recent future. What is your anticipation here for 2026? Is there anything that could be thrown in front of this market, do you think, that would slow it down?
Yeah, I think if we had a realistic expectation that rates were going to remain higher and that the Fed would stop cutting, that would definitely put some brakes on it. The problem is anything that they do like that is going to stop investment. It's going to stop the mergers and acquisitions. It's going to stop companies from investing in one another. It's going to stop hedge funds from investing in companies. And before you know it, we'll be in some kind of recession. And guess what's going to happen then? Interest rates are going to come pouring down. And so even if you think that interest rates are not going to come down a lot more, it's going to be very difficult for them to go up without us having a recession and then having them come down, way down, right? So all things look to some lower interest rates. The question is how much and how fast. I do think looking at the end of the year, one of the Fed members was calling for a 50 basis point rate cut in December. I doubt we're going to get that. The question is, are we going to get the 25 basis points? And so far, that looks pretty likely that we're going to get it again in December. After that, we may see some pausing of that. But right now, there's about a 67% chance that we're going to get the December cut. And then the market's basically betting on holding rates right now in January and then cutting again in March. So we'll see if that holds water or not. There's a lot of things that could change that, but I would say that if there's anything that's going to put the brakes on it, it's going to be rates at this point.
So, Jake, for those people who are not invested enough right now and they're waiting for an opportunity for the market to go a little bit lower so that they can get in lower, is that something that they should really do? Or do you think, regardless of how the markets go, if you're not invested, go ahead and pull the trigger and do it?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on your goals and your current positioning. So this is not blanket advice, but here's an idea for those. If you're in that boat, like Jeff just talked about, let's say you got $10,000 you want to put to work. Put some of that money to work now. Let's say $2,500 of it or something. Get a little bit of something going there and then systematically invest that money in. Again, this is an idea. This is not me giving financial advice. But if you decide you're going to wait until the market comes down to 5,000 S&P, you could be waiting a very, very long time and cost yourself a lot more than you gain, depending on what happens. And so it's usually better to systematically invest money if you're unsure about where the bottom is or the top is and that kind of thing. Put that money to work systematically, and that way you kind of dollar cost average in if the market's coming down. Or if it keeps going up, you're still averaging in and at least you're getting invested and you're not just missing the rally. So I would be very cautious waiting here because I personally believe we're going to see this market really explode to the upside over the next couple of years. And you want to be a part of it if you can be.
Well, it was Zig Ziglar, I believe, who said famously one time that you can't wait until all lights are on green to head to town. You've just got to get started. And I think that's great advice for people who are not in the market right now or people who haven't invested. And I think it's pretty good advice. You got $10,000, invest $2,500, and then just do it systematically. But yeah, you cannot wait. And I've always remembered that to go to town and all lights are on green. Talking here with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. Our phone number 417-889-7233. If you'd like to call that number right now, schedule a consultation with Jake or Ed here at Floyd Financial Group. Casual conversation to talk about your journey towards confident retirement. Certainly, this is a great time to do that. No time like the present. 417-889-7233. Let's shift gears here a little bit. I understand that President Trump possibly could be putting $2,000 in our pockets in the near future. What's that all about, Jake?
Yeah, so Trump floated the idea of refunding some of the tariff money, some of the Doge money, however you want to look at it, back to people in the form of a kind of a stimulus check. You know, the government's collecting this, so let's give it back to the people. I think that could happen. I don't know that it's likely to happen, but it's something that Trump has floated. If that does happen, the market will definitely like that because a lot of that money will find its way into the market and it'll start buying and that'll create some upward pressure. I think at this point, though, it's kind of a one-time thing, so it's not going to be repeated buying or anything like that, but the idea, I think, is to help with healthcare costs going up, and so having that kind of one-time windfall would help offset what a lot of people's health insurance is about to go up.
Jake, you mentioned Doge there for a minute, and it reminded me of Elon Musk. He was all over the news here about a year ago with his Doge, but now he seems to have sort of disappeared into the crevices a little bit. Last time I looked, there was a headline that said Musk may quit Tesla. Where is Elon Musk these days? What's he doing?
Yeah, so that's been a little bit now. 3 weeks ago, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast for the 4th or 5th time. If you're a fan of Elon or are interested in what he's doing, I would definitely recommend listening to that episode. It's episode 2404 with Joe Rogan, but he talks a lot about Doge, a lot about where the fraud is coming in, how it's coming in, a lot of stuff that he was hesitant to disclose 8 months ago because he didn't want to get whacked. He goes into quite a lot of detail on where that money is going and where the fraud's coming from. So he says that Doge is still very much underway and is constantly cutting spending everywhere it can. He thinks that that's going well, and he's still definitely hanging around there. He had a lot of positive things to say about Trump, which I think is good. If you're like me, I'd love to see Trump and Elon kind of patch things up there because I think it's generally good for the country. And so he says a lot of good things about him. So as far as Tesla goes, he had a vote for a new pay package for him that was valued at almost $1 trillion if he hits certain milestones that would arguably take the market cap of Tesla to 10 plus trillion, most likely, if he hits these goals. But they voted 75% positive for him to have this pay package approved. And so I think he's definitely staying at Tesla. I think you're going to see a lot more about the Roadster soon. He teases about the Roadster, which is his two-door Tesla. He says there's going to be an unveiling, and he thinks it'll be the most memorable unveiling in history. So we will see what that means. Maybe the car can fly and some other things. He is definitely the master of hype, not always the master of delivery, but I think he's definitely very much at Tesla, and you're going to see a lot more effort put in there. One of the things I thought was also kind of interesting that he said was he kind of downplays the whole Mars thing a little bit, which if you've followed Elon for a long time, he wants to colonize Mars and all that kind of thing. He has kind of backed off of that a little bit and suggested that Earth was the place to be. So I thought that was a little bit interesting because he's been so gung-ho on the Mars thing for a decade that him backing off that I think is generally a good thing because we can use him and his intelligence here and on this planet. So
I would agree with you completely. I think I'm going to stay here on Earth right now. I enjoy the atmosphere a little bit more than I would on Mars. Jake, before we wrap up this segment on current events, I want you to comment on some of the calls that the banks have made recently.
Yeah, so some of the big investment banks, like we were talking about earlier, are putting their price targets out for the end of year and starting to put price targets out for next year. I think it was Goldman Sachs as well as Tom Lee had his prediction out there at 7,500 before. But some of the big banks are now saying 7,300, 7,500 on the S&P 500, which is a pretty bold call given we got like 6 weeks, 7 weeks to the end of the year. That's a huge move to the upside. Now, again, I do agree that it's going to be up and maybe up quite a bit. Whether it's going to be up 10 or 12%, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but I do think that there's enough negativity out there to be converted that is a possibility that could happen.
Well, Jake, we're running out of time for this segment. I think we have pretty much covered it all. And again, for our listeners, if you have been hearing this program and you're wondering if your portfolio is designed to survive in times like these, you want to find out, we're offering the Floyd Financial Group Retirement Review, no cost, no obligation whatsoever. And you can get yours right now by calling 417-889-7233. Just leave your name, telephone number. Lovely Ashley will call you back during the week and set up that appointment for you to talk with either Jake or Randy when he's in the office. Again, it's not going to cost you a dime, and we'll meet you where you are. 417-889-7233. We're also online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Jake, let's take a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about what you may be missing from your portfolio when our program continues right here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about what you may be missing from your portfolio.
And Jake, a lot of investors think that they're well diversified because they own a mix of stocks and bonds, but you say that that's only part of the picture, so let's dig into what might be missing. A lot of retirees and investors feel confident because they do hold that blend of stocks and bonds. Why might that not be enough in today's environment?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that comes down to what your individual goals are, and that really determines what types of investments could be appropriate. There's nothing wrong with stocks and bonds, but there are a lot of other asset classes out there, such as gold and crypto and real estate, annuities and life insurance and CDs, bank products. There's a whole array of things that you can have in your portfolio. And so I am a fan of diversification, not only in the stock market, but diversification of strategy, meaning I don't want to have everything in the stock market or everything in the bond market or everything in annuities. I like the idea that when one solution is working, maybe not all the solutions are working at the same time, but that means when your one solution is definitely not working, you may have some of your other solutions working for you. And so diversification, but also diversification of strategy is called for.
And strategy is a big component of retirement planning. Now, we've all heard the old saying about don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I think that's what you're talking about here, just with stocks and bonds. You mentioned some alternative investments. I mean, gold and silver, those are more speculation. But can you get into a little bit more detail about what someone can flesh their portfolio out with if they are retirement age beyond stocks and bonds?
Yeah, so generally speaking, in retirement, we need to make sure we have enough of the three main components of what an investment does for you. So we need growth, we need a certain amount of safety, and we need a certain amount of liquidity. And no one investment does all three of those things well. So we need to have at least a couple of different buckets of money to make sure we satisfy all three of those things. Now, each investor needs a different amount of those three things. Some people are really focused on growth and they're not as worried about safety and liquidity. As you get closer to retirement, safety and liquidity become a more important part than they are during your accumulation years where you're just trying to make as much money as you can. As you get ready to take money out, safety really plays a bigger role, and obviously liquidity plays a bigger role if you're wanting to live off of that money. So gold and silver in a physical format are not particularly safe and they're not particularly liquid. So in a lot of cases, those can serve a similar function to what stocks are, which is that they grow potentially, but they're fairly risky. So as we're looking to diversify away from the stock market, one of the things we look at is interest rates. What do interest rates look like in the moment? So right now, interest rates are 3.5%, 4% or so at the bank. If you're buying a CD or something, that level of interest rates is also pretty good for certain types of annuities, fixed index annuities. And so as we're looking at things, especially on the safe bucket category, interest rates play a pretty big role in how that works and how that looks. How much volatility there is in the market also comes into play with how much money you can make on some of these annuity products that track the stock market like a fixed index annuity does. But basically, we just want to make sure that we're building the plan and that the plan has investment components that suit you and really help you work to accomplish those goals, whether that's to maximize income, whether you already have enough income and you really want to maximize how much money you have to pass to beneficiaries, maybe you're charitably minded. All those types of things come into play when we're selecting the investment mix.
So, Jake, let's talk about income, especially for retirees. How does this broader diversification help create a more reliable income stream, do you think?
Yeah, so if we're just relying solely on stocks and bonds, depending on what stocks we own, they may or may not pay dividends to create income. But even a bond portfolio is very interest rate sensitive as well, to where if it's not kicking off income, we're having to sell our investments in order to generate that income. So again, annuities can be a good way to do that. I am not personally a big fan of income riders and lifetime income annuities simply because I want you to actually make money, not just pay yourself with your own money. But there are some solutions there, depending on what your goals are, to really make sure that you're not relying too heavily on any one instrument for income, where if that doesn't come in, we're not just in big trouble. But again, a lot of it really comes down to if we have enough safety, we can weather these storms so that when markets come back, when interest rates come back, we can make up that lost ground and get back to even. Versus if we have too much risk in the portfolio and we're taking income out, we can really take income beyond the point of no return where you can get into kind of the death spiral. So having enough safety really plays into a big part of the solidity, if you will, or the solidness of your income plan.
Jake, a lot of listeners are nervous about market volatility. How can these additional investments help smooth out that ride?
Yeah, so having some principal protection in place, either through annuities or through savings vehicles, CDs, things like that. Again, like I said in this last piece here, I think that making sure that we don't dig ourselves too big a hole. So let's say we have $100,000 and we want to take $5,000 a year out of that investment. If we lose, let's say 10% in the market or whatever we're invested in, that's recoverable. But if we had like a 2008 scenario and you're just all in the market was down 53% over the Great Recession there. And so if you're taking a 5% withdrawal in the beginning and you lose half the money, now you're taking a 10% withdrawal. And as you take 10%, that's way too much money and you'll just never get back to even. So having principal protection, whether it comes from savings instruments, from annuities with principal guarantees, or even in some cases sprinkling in some bonds with our stocks and kind of creating a portfolio that when the market's down, bonds are up, and when interest rates are low, stocks are ripping. That can be a kind of a give and take too. So everybody's situation is different enough where, again, I don't want to give too much just blanket advice because what's appropriate for one person is not necessarily appropriate for somebody else. But this is what we spend a lot of time thinking about in here when you come in to talk to me. And in between our meetings, I'm thinking about these things when I put together a plan. Talking with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group, and we're talking about alternative to just stocks and bonds. Again, our phone number, 417-889-7233. If you'd like to further this conversation with Jake or Randy, just a casual conversation, not going to cost you a dime, 417-889-7233. Jake, if someone's listening to the program today and they're wondering to themselves, I'm not sure that I have enough alternative investments, how do we determine what's right for each person? Yeah, so we need to examine how much risk we're taking, how much income we're planning to take off of our investments, because if we're really pushing the limits of how much income we can take, then we have less room for volatility. If we're taking a lesser amount of money, we can afford for things to be a little more volatile in exchange for higher return. But again, this is what I do for a living, and my goal is to get you to retirement, get you paid through retirement, and leave you better than I found you at the end of retirement. And so whether it's going to charity or whether it's going to your kids or whether you're spending every last dime, we're going to try to put together a portfolio that will accomplish those goals, and it can be as automated for you as possible so that all you have to do is enjoy retirement. So beyond stocks and bonds, we've been talking about certainly cash and cash equivalents. I think that would be part of the alternative investments. Also insurance products, things like annuities, fixed index annuities, not so much variable annuities. But I'm hearing in the background, some people are talking about real estate, supply and demand. What do you think about real estate as an alternative investment? Not actually actively owning it, but passively owning real estate. Does real estate have a place in someone's retirement portfolio, do you think? It can, for sure, especially if we're talking about physically, like actually owning real estate and renting it out. And if you've never been a landlord, I would not suggest that being your first move going into retirement, because that can be quite a journey. If it's something you've been used to, though, there's lots of people that successfully can diversify a portfolio using real estate. Honestly, I find a lot of people that do real estate, they don't really want to do anything else because that's what they're comfortable with. But I think real estate can be a good investment. I'm not a big fan of packaged real estate investments because I don't feel like they do enough for you, especially for the lack of liquidity. So like a real estate investment trust, especially ones that are not publicly traded, a lot of those are going to come with 7 to 10 year commitments, and they sound kind of good on the front end, but they're incredibly illiquid. If you want to get out early, you got to go find somebody to buy it off you because they will not cash you out. So I don't like anything I can't change. So I like to be able to change things. And if we're getting income and we need a little more income, I want to be able to adjust it up. Or if we're getting plenty of income, we don't want to be taking it out just to pay taxes on it, so we can adjust it down. I don't know what retirement will look like exactly for you, but I can promise you it will be different than you're thinking in your head when you're thinking about this. And so having flexibility is key.
So, Jake, I want to wrap up this conversation about alternative investments by talking about commodities. What sort of commodities should someone be looking at if they're looking at commodities at all?
Holding physical commodities or like futures on corn and pork bellies and gold and silver and things, arguably, in my opinion, is very rarely something we should be considering in a retirement plan. And that's just because, as you said earlier, they're speculative assets. In a lot of cases with alternatives, we're trying to diversify away risk. We're not trying to add a bunch of risk to the portfolio, which is what commodities generally do. Many commodities markets are more volatile than the stock market. So I'm a little leery of adding straight commodities into a portfolio, but it is something we can look at if you think that's something for you.
Talking with Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group about alternative investments. Again, if you are worried that your portfolio is not diversified enough, you'd like to talk with Jake or Randy here at Floyd Financial Group, give us a call right now at 417-889-7233. Schedule your consultation with Randy or Jake here at Floyd Financial Group. It's not going to cost you a dime, and there is no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. 417-889-7233. And of course, you can always find out more about us online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Jake, time for a break here on Show Me the Money. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the first year of retirement rule when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shade.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about the first year of retirement rule.
And Jake, let's start right there. What exactly is the first year of retirement rule, and why do experts think that this is really so important?
Yeah, so the first year of retirement rule talks about the fact that what happens in the first 12 months after you stop working can really have a lot of influence on how successful your retirement is or how not successful it is. Just saying that first 12 months tends to have an echoing effect over the rest of retirement.
So, Jake, do you believe that that's true, that the first year of retirement really is going to dictate how the rest of your retirement goes, or is this more of a learning period where you make mistakes and you fix them?
Yeah, I do agree with the first year retirement rule. That's a big deal. And this is something I talk with a lot about clients when we're first going into retirement. And I have somebody that's really like, hey, I want to go and spend all this money and do these things and pay off my truck and pay off my house and all this kind of thing. I'm like, hey, let's settle down just a little bit. Paying off your house doesn't change whether it appreciates or not, right? And whether you pay off your car or not is more than a factor of whether you can. And so as we're looking at spending assets in retirement, the tone we set in that first year, any money we spend in the first year is money that's not working for you over the next 30 years. And so if we can go in a little bit carefully into the first year, it generally pays big dividends because you'll make more money, and that sets the tone for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. With success up front, and you're earning more than you're spending, which helps the portfolio continue to earn more than it spends. So I think there's a lot of truth to it.
Jake, I've heard some people compare the first year of retirement sort of like going to college in the first year. You may have that freshman year wild situation, a lot of travel, gifts to kids, and maybe even a vacation home. And then suddenly, boy, the tuition is due here. It's called the tax bill. Do you think it's a whole new beginning, or is that really a fair comparison, first year of retirement, sort of like going off to college?
Yeah, I would say it kind of depends on the person. There is some of that, and I think part of us designing a plan for someone is understanding, sometimes we front load retirement on purpose where we say, hey, I'm going to spend half of my retirement savings in the first 10 years of retirement. And then I'll live on the other half the rest of the time. And by doing that and really accelerating what we're spending, that allows you to do things that maybe you haven't got to do because you were working while your health still permits you to do it. And so I have people that like that idea. I have some people that are like, no, I don't want to risk running out of money under any circumstances. Let's take it easy. And then as we build up more, then we can take more out. And that's a very viable plan too. It kind of depends on what your vision of retirement is. Some people really want to travel and they want to go other places. They want to go to Europe and they want to go to the Middle East and they want to go to China and they want to go all over the place, Personally, I love this country.
Yeah,
so
me too.
if it was me retiring, you can check all that stuff off. I'm not doing any of that. Again, what you want to do in retirement is totally up to you. I just think there's a lot of things in the United States that I haven't seen that would be perfectly fine for me to see. And in the current political climate and everything, I really have no interest in going to, let's say, France or the Gaza Strip or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Going to Moscow or Kyiv. So I really don't want to go to those places. So if that's important to you, though, we will definitely build the plan around that. But for a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of people that are from around here, conservative people, really don't really want to go anywhere either. And if you're not going to travel and really tear out the bone in those first few years, you'll probably find if you did a decent job saving that you have more than enough money to do what you want to do. Most people just want to replace what they're getting now and make it feel like it does now, but just not have to go to work. And if that's the goal, we can definitely sharpen the pencil and make that work. And a lot of people have saved more than enough to do that, and we'll just grow the money while we're paying you income. And so it's a little bit of a case-by-case basis.
Jake, you've been doing this now for going on almost 2 decades. You've been around it for a long period of time with your dad. What are some of the most common financial mistakes that people make in that first year that you've observed?
Paying off your house.
Really?
End of quote.
Okay. That's probably one of the big ones.
There's nothing wrong with paying your house off,
right.
But paying off a huge balance on a house with retirement money is probably the single biggest mistake I can think of. Or building a house with retirement money and paying cash. And it's because it takes so much more than you're actually spending because you got to pay all the taxes too. If you have $300,000 that you want to use to pay off your house, it's going to take you $400,000 to do it. And we got to just write off $100,000 to the government. I would say that's the biggest mistake, and everything else is a very distant second. Please, before you do that, talk to somebody and make sure you understand what you're giving up before you do that. But some of the other mistakes, some people feel like, hey, I have this $700,000 or whatever, and that's more money than I can spend. So I'm going to go and do exactly what I want to do. Let me just assure you, $700,000 is a lot of money if you don't have it. But in the grand scheme of things in retirement, it's not really that much money. And you can definitely spend through it very quickly if you're not careful. So setting up a budget, setting up an income stream that you understand and you know how much you're spending is a very important thing to do. Giving gifts to people because you kind of feel like you've won the lottery because maybe you haven't made a whole lot of money during your career, but once you got to retirement, you have all this money sitting around. So you're like, hey, I'm going to help my kid here. I'm going to help my sister with this and my cousin with this. And I'm going to buy tickets to see the Chiefs this year or whatever. That kind of blind spending, which kind of goes hand in hand with the house thing, but a different kind of spending. I'd say that's the biggest thing that I would look out for until you get into retirement and get settled is, just go a little bit easy on the spending that first year.
And you just mentioned it a little while ago, too. Randy has talked about it as well, that your house appreciates whether or not you completely own it or not. So I'd like that thing to avoid is do not pay off your house. Talk to us here first. And, you talked about $700,000, Jake. If someone's 65 years old, you ask them, well, do you think you're going to live to see 75? I would say that 90% of people say that they're going to live to be 75. Well, if you got $700,000, that's $70,000 a year, and you got to pay taxes. I think that really puts it into perspective, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think that if you have $700,000, I would not plan on spending $70,000 a year, or you will not have money very long.
No, you will not.
But generally speaking, 4 or 5% of the balance each year in a withdrawal is kind of a responsible amount to take in income. And then as you grow that money, obviously you can give yourself a raise. But I would say there's actually probably more like 20 or 30% of the people that I talk to that really don't think they're going to live 10 years beyond retirement. And I think a lot of it's based on maybe their dad didn't live to see 60 and things like that. And so it's important to cherish what you have now and live in the moment.
Right.
But it's also important to realize that you could be wrong and you could see 90.
That's right.
And you don't want to be destitute for the rest of your life because we lived it up a little bit too hard in the beginning. And so like anything else in life, there's a balance. And if you will come see me and tell me what's important to you, I'm confident that we can come up with a plan that'll work good for you.
On the flip side, Jake, I've met people who are so afraid of running out of money that they hardly spend any money at all. They shop at Goodwill, they're cutting coupons. Is that also a problem?
It is. And especially knowing that I'm talking to a conservative audience right now, I would say that probably close to half the people listening are probably more worried about spending their money than they are worried about running out of it at all. Meaning, going from saving money to spending it is a difficult switch for some people, especially if you've done a good job saving, you saved your whole life. And when I tell you, hey, it's time to start spending it, that just feels wrong to you. And I think that that's okay, and that's why you did such a good job saving. But as my dad has said on the show many times, this time of year, you see these squirrels scurrying around, storing their acorns. Why do they do that? Because when the food is no longer around, they can go back and dig those up and use those to get through the times where they don't have the money coming in, the acorns in this case, right? It's the same thing in retirement. You've done this for a purpose. And now it's time to flip the switch and be able to use that money to live out the rest of your days comfortably. And so I understand that some people will struggle with that. And again, if you'll allow me to help you, I can help you understand and make sure that we don't do too much so that you can still sleep at night. But I can help you kind of flip that switch and get you to the other side of retirement.
Jake, you have mentioned before on this program, your dad has mentioned too, that financial adjustments aren't the hardest part. It's more the lifestyle change. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I would say that the lifestyle change of not having 40 or 50 hours a week committed to getting ready and going to work, that's probably the most difficult change that people make, is especially if you're not farming, you don't have cattle to take care of and things like that, and you just go from a job to no job. Figuring out what to do with yourself, I think, is the thing people struggle with the most. Once they realize, hey, Jake's got the plan, Jake set up the plan, and Jake's going to pay me this income from my account each month like a direct deposit, and I'm not going to miss a beat. After a few months of that, they're like, oh, I'm good, I'm okay. I'm not going to not have income. Then the biggest thing is, figuring out who you are when you don't have to work 40 or 50 hours a week. And I think that if you have your financial plan secure, then you can take on that challenge a little bit easier.
Jake, for someone who's about to retire and they're listening to the program right now, or maybe they just did retire, what is one action step that they should take, and I'm talking about this week, to set themselves up right for retirement?
Jeff, I think that having a plan and having someone to help you execute that plan is probably the most important thing you can do. If you've never been in to see a financial advisor, whether it's me or someone else, go in and sit down with someone and say, okay, here's where I'm at. Here's where I want to be. Am I on track? How do I get income turned on? And talk that through. And most people feel a lot better after they've seen where they are. Even if they're not quite where they want to be, knowing where you are really helps. It's a little bit like balancing your checkbook. Back in the day, you'd say, hey, I'm nervous because I don't know where I'm at. And you go back through and you look at the bills and you're like, okay, maybe I spent a little bit too much here, or maybe I didn't save enough here, but here's where I am now, and now I know what I need to do to get to where I want to be. I think if you'll sit down with someone, again, either me or somebody else, and you have that conversation, I think it'll really help you understand where you need to be and then help you get there so that when you do retire, you can enjoy things.
That's great advice, Jake. So the takeaway, I think, is to treat your first year of retirement like the foundation of a house. You want to build it strong, you want to make it intentional, and the rest of your retirement will stand on it. The goal isn't just to retire, it's to retire well. So if that is your goal, to retire well, you need some help with that. We're here to help you. All you've got to do is call 417-889-7233. You can make that call right now if you want. Leave your name, telephone number. Ashley will call you back during the week and set up that appointment for you. No cost, no obligation, no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. 417-889-7233. Make that call today. You can also find out more about us online at floydfinancialgroup.com. Jake, time for a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about Social Security, timing, and more when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready to climb a mountain of financial know-how? Good, because it's time for more Show Me the Money with your financial Sherpa, Jake Floyd.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about retirement moves to make before year end.
And Jake, year end, it's not that far ahead of us here. What are we looking, about 6 weeks or so? Let's start with Social Security. It's the backbone for a lot of retirees, but timing can make a very huge difference. What should folks be thinking about as 2025 wraps up?
I have to ask you a quick question, Jeff, because I know that as I was littler, right, everybody would tell me, well, as you get older, time actually, everything seems like it goes a lot faster.
Yeah.
You know, when you're 10 years old and you have to wait 10 minutes, it seems like 10 hours, you know.
Right.
And as you get older, it speeds up. But I'm not convinced that time isn't actually speeding up, because I cannot believe that it's the middle of November already.
I know, me neither.
I mean, it seems like we just reelected Donald Trump.
I know, it should be like March or something.
So I don't know. It feels like it's actually getting faster.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. I do too. And I remember having a talk or a little discussion with my 5-year-old daughter at the time. She's 34 now, but nevertheless, we were talking about that. And at 5 years old, a year is 1/5 of your life, and you can't remember probably the first 3 years. But for those of us who have a very large filing cabinet, I've got many files in my cabinet. If I pull out one, it's just a very small percentage. But for her, she had a small filing cabinet. So if she pulls out one, it's a very large percentage. And I think that that's the way that we perceive time, is that the older we get, the faster time goes, because our file cabinet is just very, very big. I don't know if that's a good explanation, but it was the best that I could do here on the spot.
Yeah. So back to your question about Social Security. So timing of electing Social Security is a big deal. For those who've listened to this show very long, you'll know that I have a much more simplistic take than a lot of people do on Social Security. I don't think it has to be a super complicated thing, but understanding what you give up or what you capitalize on by waiting or delaying Social Security is important. I'm generally not a fan of retiring and then waiting to take Social Security by spending your own money. I would rather do that the other way around, meaning if you retire, let's spend Social Security so I can have to spend as little of my own money as possible, because that gives you more control. And I like that a lot better. There are couples that decide they want to split it, where one of them files at 62, one that files at 65 or 67 or 70 or whatever. There can be some reasons to do that in strategy, but at the end of the day, we're still gambling with how long we think we're going to live. You know, I get people say, hey, when's the best time to file for Social Security? Well, if you can tell me the exact day you're going to die, I'll let you know. And since nobody can answer that question, nobody can really answer what the best way, quote unquote, to take Social Security is. What I know is that I really don't trust the government. And so generally speaking, if I was retired, I would turn that on as soon as possible, because I want to get as much as I can while I can. And I want to ease the burden on my retirement savings. And so again, this is probably the number one question I get, is when do we file for Social Security? And there's definitely a discussion to be had for each person there. I'm not saying it's that simple, but it's not the way it was prior to 2020, where there was literally like a million different ways to file for Social Security, with file and restrict, file and suspend, and then refile and all the things. It's not nearly so complicated now, but I would say this is a very important thing to talk about. You need to understand, if you file before 67 or your full retirement age, that you're limited on how much money you can make. So there's a lot of things that go into it. This is part of the plan. This is part of what I talk about when people come in to see me. It is hard to overstate the importance, though, because once you make that decision, it's really determines the course of a lot of the rest of your savings.
Jake, if someone has made the Social Security decision before coming to see you and then they realize they've made the wrong decision, is it something that can be adjusted?
It can be for a certain period of time. If you're concerned that you've made a mistake in filing for Social Security, or if you just want to talk about where we're at, you don't have to worry about any of that. You come in here and see me and we'll look at it no matter what it looks like. We will make the best tasting lemonade out of whatever lemons that you bring in. It's going to be fantastic, folks.
Okay. It's going to be one big, beautiful glass of lemonade there. What about savings, Jake? Are there ways to bump up what you have before the clock strikes midnight here on 2025?
So the answer is yes, Jeff. I think that with savings accounts are still paying decent amounts of interest. CDs are still doing that. High yield savings accounts. Again, there's a little bit of speculation as to how long that stuff's going to be around if the Fed keeps cutting interest rates. But for right now, those are all plenty good options to save going into year end. Although I will say, if you're like me, I have a little bit harder time saving in year end because I'm spending money on the kids, spending money on other people. But if you are saving, those are still solid options. Now, if interest rates get way down there, we may have to get a little more creative about where we save that money, but those are good options for now.
Jake, what about retirement accounts? And I'm talking about things like 401ks and IRAs. Is it too late to make a difference for 2025?
No, definitely not. And in many cases, we can contribute to an IRA all the way up till tax day of the following year. From January to tax day, you can actually contribute for the previous year or the current year. Some people will elect to wait until they have their taxes done to decide exactly what they want to do, to see what the tax guy recommends. So in most cases, you're going to have until tax day to contribute to IRA, Roth IRA, if you want to. Catch-up contributions for your 401k, those can get contributed to till the end of the year. Your HR person can help you figure out how to do that if you want to do that directly into your 401k or 403b. So yeah, those are some of the ways you can catch up.
Jake, you mentioned the dreaded T word there, taxes. They're always top of mind. Anything retirees should tackle before year end, December 31st?
Yeah, so as far as taxes go, we talked about catch-up contributions, IRAs, Roth IRAs. There's also, you can contribute to your HSA as well. You can give gifts under $19,000 that we don't have to report to the government. So if you give under $19,000 per person, or $38,000 per couple per person, you can go underneath the gift tax law, don't have to file a gift tax return and that kind of thing. If you're over age 73 and doing charitable contributions from your RMD, you can do QCDs, which keeps you from having to have those reported to the IRS as well. Basically, it's a way to give a charitable donation, whether to church or some other charity, without it showing up on the tax rolls. So those are some other things to think about.
Talk about things to tackle before year end with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. 417-889-7233 is our telephone number. Jake, what about RMDs and other year-end housekeeping duties?
Yeah, so you need to make sure that you've taken your full RMD. Your RMD is based on a divisor that gets divided into the value of your retirement account as of 12/31/24 in this case. So understanding how much you have to take and making sure we take the appropriate amount before the end of the year is important. You'll be penalized, or you can be penalized. If the IRS catches it, you'll be penalized 25% of the amounts you don't take. So it's important to make sure we take what you're supposed to take. At Floyd Financial Group, if you're a current client or if you have me managing your stuff, we've already probably talked about this at this point, and we help manage for people so they don't have to worry about how much to take. We help manage that and make sure everybody gets everything taken before the end of the year. If you're listening and you have a message from myself or Taylor about your RMD, please call us back.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because we're getting close there. I think I only have like 4 or 5 people left that need to take it. It's our job to help make sure that you take it.
Jake, would it be a good idea to take a look at your, estate planning, maybe update your will, POA, things like that?
Yeah, it could be a good time to do that. That's not as time sensitive a thing into year end, but it is something you can do. A lot of estate planning attorneys and things are a little less busy this time of year. So assuming they're in town, you could maybe make up some of that. Right after the first of the year is when those people are the most busy because everybody has had Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner with their parents. And they're like, wow, I didn't realize Dad was this far gone. So they get in there and they're now doing all their estate planning. So right after the first of the year is kind of the worst time. So if you're going to do it the next 6 months, now might be a good time to look at it.
Right, and plan for watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation over and over again. You talked about the family getting together. One of my favorite shows there. Anyway, you're talking with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. As the clock ticks here, we're about 6 weeks or so before the end of the year. Let's talk about phased retirement and a backup plan here. For folks not quite ready to retire, is there any way to sort of begin to ease into it here during the holiday season?
Yeah, so if you don't already have the plan in place, you can look at your planning into the retirement. A lot of people will end up phasing in where they say, hey, I'm going from 50 hours a week. I want to work 3 days a week for a while, and then 2 days a week for a while, and then stop working altogether. Your employer may or may not allow you to do that, but I've found in a lot of cases they will because they don't want to lose good, hardworking people, which I know everyone listening to this show is a good, hardworking person.
Sure.
I just know that about you. So we want to make sure that you understand what's going to happen. And if you have health insurance, you got PTO. If you need, some people have like a knee surgery or something they want to do before they get done. So planning all that out to make sure you're retiring on the day that you actually want to retire can be a good thing to look at ahead of time.
Right, and having those surgeries, that's a good point because you've pretty much eaten up your entire deductible if you've got that here. So it's a good time to try to do these things. But I think if you need knee surgery, you're trying to schedule it right now before the end of the year, you might be just a little bit late. But nevertheless, dental cleanings and things like that. Jake, it is a lot of actionable advice you've given us today. If listeners just take a few of these moves before year end, they could set themselves up for a much stronger 2026. So if that is you want to set yourself up for a strong 2026, I would say that one thing you want to do here before the end of the year is contact us here at Floyd Financial Group, set up a retirement review with Randy or Jake. It's not going to cost you a dime, no cost, no obligation. 417-889-7233 is that number. You can make that call right now. Leave your name, telephone number, and Ashley will call you back during the week and set up that appointment for you. 417-889-7233. Also online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Well, Jake, it's been a great show, but unfortunately, our time is up. So for Jake Floyd, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next week right here with another edition of Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning is offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.